Hello, my name is Matthias Cavodi. I'd like to welcome you guys to my channel. Today we're going to talk about music instead of comic books. I haven't been able to read too many comic books this week. I have two jobs and they're maintaining me very occupied, sadly. But one good thing is I was able to, on one of my jobs, I'm able to crank up the music and listen to whatever I want. So I binged through the Red Hot Chili Peppers catalog, and it's some weird obsessive compulsive thing I have to do. I have to rate and categorize things, and I just love doing these type of ranking videos. So let's get into my top 10 favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers albums. And at number 10, I actually split it up with the two latest albums of the Chili Peppers with Josh Klinghoffer as the guitar player. I'm With You, and I can't remember the other one, The Getaway. And both of these albums are okay. I don't like Josh Chris's playing in general. He's not a bad guitar player. Like, he tries interesting stuff. I feel like he lacks grit and rock and roll. And I just want John Frusciante back on the band. Like, I was willing to give a guy a chance, but it just lacks, as you would say in Spanish, huevos. See, balls to his playing. The band sounds very subdued, very melancholy since he joined became part. But the songs are like well written. They're very sophisticated. Dark Necessities is a awesome, at least for me, a awesome single. But both of these albums, I just don't go back to listening to them. They're just okay. So at number 9, we have Freaky Styley, the Chili Peppers' second album. I think it came out in 1985. Here we have Hillel Slovak, the original guitar player of the Chili Peppers. He's actually back in the band. He left the band on the first album, which was atrocious, and he came back. Jack Irons on the drums. And here we have a band experimenting with punk funk. I'm not sure if they invented punk funk, but they're one of the punk funk trailblazers, something that later on Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Groove were to take under their arm and go running to it with it. We have George Clinton as the producer on this album, and we have two classic funk tracks on this. Anthony Kiedis still has to learn his craft. Like, his singing isn't the best, and his rapping is, oh my God. But he does have charm. You can see the potential to him. Guitar playing is very experimental, very, I guess, cutting edge for the 1980s. Lee's frenetic bass playing also is a treat. Jack Irons' drums sound really stale. That's something really surprising. So we're going to leave Freaky Styley behind and go to number 8, where we have Uplifting Mofo Party Plan, the album that came after, where we have the band with more money. They sound much better, much more focused. The punk funk comes out sounding better executed. The guitars sound awesome. Hillel is experimenting with new guitar pedals, sounds, effects. It's a real shame that I think he died of a drug overdose. To what would have happened if this guy stayed around experimenting and grew as a guitar player. It's a real shame. Flea's bass playing, it's atomic. I actually picked up the bass and started playing bass because I saw Flea on one of the Chili Peppers videos, and I thought to myself, I have to be as awesome as that dude that has pants with bears on him. One of my favorite tracks off this album is Funky Crime. Also, this is one of the first albums that they start experimenting more with melody. Like, Anthony Kiedis starts putting in more melody and singing his lyrics with the track Behind the Sun. Special secret song inside. I know with modern sensibilities and political correctness, this song wouldn't fly. And it's just wrong all over the place, but I have a blast singing that chorus. Another one is No Chump Love Sucker. Like, this album would come out nowadays, it would have been shot down. But we have to forgive him. It was the 80s. So after number 8, we're going to do number 7. I put By the Way. It's a very interesting album. Now here we have the basic setup with Chad, Flea, Frusciante, Anthony Kiedis. But from what I know, I'm working off memory here, is that there's like a certain level of conflict between Flea and Frusciante. So it's more of a Frusciante focused album. Flea doesn't play as much on this one. To the point, it feels like he phones a couple bass lines in. Like they're very, very lazy. And a couple of tracks on this one that don't work for me, but the good stuff on this just really outweighs the bad stuff. There's this half-baked ska song on this one that doesn't work. There's two very alternative, weird tracks that also, but here, the song, By the Way, Dosed, is one of the Frusciante's best tracks ever. John's sound on this album in general. Love John Frusciante's backing vocals. And actually at number 6, I put in a live album, the double live album, Hyde Park, which, because what I felt like, and by the way, it feels like some of the album feels a little bit flat. Some of the ideas don't feel complete. And you can hear how they complete these ideas in Hyde Park playing some of these tracks live. They sound much better. Like Don't Forget Me is a freaking awesome heavy track, and it comes out better on the Hyde Park live. Also, Throw Away Your Television sounds a lot better on this. Also, you can hear the chemistry between Frusciante, Flea, and Chad. When they're in the zone, these guys are total at jamming. Sometimes things go wrong, but when things go right, oh my God. I only got to see these guys once, and I was just really blown away. I always feel like the studio albums do lack the energy that they do have live, that chaos. So let's go to number 5. I put Mother's Milk. This is the first time we have the main band together, Frusciante, Chad, Anthony Kiedis, and Flea. It's a weird funk. It's more funk metal. It's like, from what I've heard, Frusciante was actually forced to play more heavy on this album. You do have that more metal aspect to it and a lot more distortion. And Flea's just pretty much unhinged with his bass playing, like a Stone Cold Bush, Nowhere Weirder Than Me. Higher Ground. Higher Ground is actually literally one of the tracks that made me play the bass. I wanted to understand what he was doing on that instrument, why it sounded so cool. And actually slapping is one of the main parts to my style. I think I do moderately well. So a couple of tracks on this album are pretty atrocious, like Sexy Mexican Maid, which would go over well if they put out that track nowadays. And there's this weird political track, Johnny Kicked a Hole in the Sky, something like that. Oh man, that's terrible. And also a couple of outtakes from this album are really good. Salute to Kareem, the song that made us what we are. Those are outtakes from this album that had left me scratching my head because those are really good. Also, Show Me Your Soul, the song that ended up on Pretty Woman. It's a really awesome track. Also, on this album, we have Pretty Little Ditty. That's the track that was sampled by Crazy Town and became that massive hit in the early 2000s. So, leaving that behind, we're going to go to number 4. I put Californication. Back when it came out, early 1999, I guess, I was really into super heavy metal. I bought this album after that really long time from Moment a Hot Minute to Californication. They took forever. David Navarro leaves the band. John Frusciante comes back. And at first I didn't like it because my head was in the wrong place. It took me a while to warm up to it. I really wanted one hot minute too. But after that, I just discovered this album's a masterpiece. I love Frusciante's minimalist guitar style. So Californication is one of the first albums I learned how to play from front to back on bass and also on guitar. I'm not the best guitar player ever, but I can defend myself. And this particular album, the songs are really fun to play. They're very well written. I feel like Flea and John back together working again. They did a fantastic job. This album has fantastic outtakes and B-sides too. And I actually got to see them for the first and only time touring on this album. I think it was like their second time around. They went on their second world tour. here in Argentina. I saw them in a festival. Deftones were the opening band. It was pouring that night. Deftones killed it. I remember Tino Moreno's mic was dying out on him every 2 seconds. And then the Chili Peppers came out. They totally rocked out. It was in a giant stadium. I remember when they opened up with Around the World, I was crushed by just the tsunami of people rushing towards the stage. And they really killed it that night. I have very fond memories. So let's go to number 3 with Stadium Arcadium. So with Californication, and by the way, it's more alternative rock in that aspect. They're not as funky, like Californication is more funky than By the Way. But Stadium Arcadium, it's a full-on funk rock album. The alternative aspect is still there, but the funk rock is very present. The rock sound in general, like some of the tracks feel really muscular. For example, what comes to mind is Ready Made. I freaking love that riff. Like some songs are pretty riff heavy. Danny California too, even though it's a little bit of a rip of a Tom Petty song. John Frusciante on this album sort of changes up his style on the 2 previous albums, by the way. And Californication, he's going for like a more minimalist type of sound, doing everything very exquisitely. In this one, he's going on full-on rock and roll mode. He's rocking out. He's playing guitar solos left and right with beautiful distortions. That fantastic vintage sound that he has on his guitar, it's just genius. Some of the things he does on the guitar on this album, like on a couple of tracks, he piles solo on top of solo. And also Flea's getting to funk out more compared to the previous album, by the way. He's playing a lot. Bass lines are more complex. They're pretty hard to play. Like you have to sit down and practice quite a bit. Like right off the top of my head, song Warlocks, you have to have a lot of agility in your right hand. And for a double album, they do a pretty good job. Like there's maybe 1 or 2 fillers, like Slow Cheetah. I always skip over that one. But outside of that, this album's a freaking joy for me. I remember being so happy when I found out the Chili Peppers had put out a double album that could satisfy my Chili Pepper fix of the time. So we're going to leave Stadium Arcadium at number 3 behind. At number 2, we have One Hot Minute. A lot of Chili Pepper fans don't like One Hot Minute. I super love this album. It's my first Chili Peppers album. I remember getting it on a road trip with my dad, going from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Popped that CD in. I remember I was really young, and it had a lot of cursing. And my dad didn't like people saying bad words and stuff like that, but he gave it a pass because he's a musician too, and he was pretty shocked how good this album was. Flea just goes nuts on this album. The best track and my favorite one is Coffee Shop, and it has 2 bass solos on that track. Dave Navarro, he brings a different feel to the band. It's more heavier. It's like leaning into more of a funk metal sound in general. And his guitar style is very different compared to Frusciante. But I really, really like Jane's Addiction, and I think he did a really good job. I also get the impression that Dave Navarro didn't just work very well with the Chili Peppers in live settings, though. It's like they sort of didn't gel, and on a personal level too. Like there was some issues, especially with Navarro's drug problem. Some tracks on this are super heavy, like Warped, Big Kick. I'm thinking One More Mob or something like that. Those are pretty super heavy tracks, but the funky stuff is also super funky and a lot of feeling. You have Aeroplane, you have Walkabout, and actually on the first band I ever had, the first track we ever learned how to play was Friends from this album. So this album has a very special place for me. Again, it just really reminds me of those fantastic road trips I used to take with my dad. And at number 1, obviously, we're going to have Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I remember the first time I saw the Give It Away video and thinking to myself, oh my God, what a fantastic bass line. I went to a rehearsal for a band, and they gave me the official tablatures to this album. And they told me, it's like, bro, you have to learn how to play this whole album, unlock the abilities in your left and right hand and bass playing if you want to be able to play with us. He made me learn this album from front to back and two Rage Against the Machine albums from front to back for me to be on that band. And even though that band was super heavy, but like crazy heavy, we would always play 2 Chili Peppers tracks. If You Have to Ask, which is super funky, and we would always play the greeting song as an encore. We would always play that song, and people would have a blast with that track. This particular album, I just love the feeling, I love the sound. Rick Rubin just kills it. I love that this album was actually recorded in a mansion, and there's actually a documentary called Funky Monks that's worth seeing the whole process, how they made this album, because I always have a feeling the best albums are recorded in houses. Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Tangy Music, Subliminal Verses from Slipknot. The fact that you record in a more intimate setting sometimes brings the best out of you. So I'm going to leave this video here. I'm going to stop rambling about my favorite band. And which are your top 3 favorite Chili Peppers albums? Put them in the comments below. I'll be back to talking about comic books in very short time. See you guys next time. Bye.